All right, welcome to part 5 of our guitar build. We are switching up with the neck. We showed you some issues that we ran into on the last build. So we're going to be going forward with our roasted bird's eye neck. We're going to be filling the channels on our groove on the spalted. We'll get working on the body of the neck kind of at the same time on this one. So let's take a look at the progress of this build and where we're at in the development of this guitar. All right, so the guitar is starting to take shape here. We showed you the process of rounding over the edges on the back, and then we've got our channel here. Now that it's cut out, you can really start to see what this thing might look like as it gets finished. It's gonna be pretty nice. And then we'll work on the filling today. We have to do a little bit of sanding prep. We're gonna make sure our channels are clean, and then we're going to also adjust this little area as the tool comes through. You can see on the neck pocket here on the upper side, there's just a little bit of a lip there that we'll have to cut. And then we obviously have to clean up this area here on the edge of the neck pocket, but we have plenty of room to kind of trim this back. So we'll take care of those two things now, and then we'll get this thing ready for some epoxy. So in the future, we have this on the schedule to adjust on the CNC pattern just to make this cleaned up a little bit better on the end. So we don't have to do this as part of the step. We haven't made that edit because sometimes they take a long time just to do a simple edit like that. So once we get this kind of where we feel comfortable with, we also have the heel of our neck here that we're just gonna want to check the fit, make sure it's gonna drop in. Obviously we have those tabs still to clean up, but it's looking pretty good so far. So we'll go ahead and stay there, and we can do some more final cleanup later on. We want to make sure it doesn't split with the grains or anything like that. Just come straight in there and trim it off. And then from there, we don't have the smoothest edge, as you can see right here. So then we'll kind of do the same process with the sanding paper. Just hit this part of the heel ever so slightly. I don't like it to be very pointy because we don't obviously want to run into anything where something bumps into it and chips it out or breaks the top off there. So I kind of just want to soften the point of this edge here just a little bit, kind of roll it into the neck pocket. Just do it to where we feel comfortable with it. Okay, one more quick thing before we get ready to do this channel is we've got to address the neck pocket area where the channels come into the neck pocket. We obviously would like that to be as clean as possible and as square as possible. So what we're gonna do is kind of block off the ends of this channel. So we're gonna make sure we don't have a ton of spillover and we have a nice clean edge all the way up to the surface of the guitar. So we're gonna use these little Teflon pieces here. And the epoxy should not stick to those. So what we'll do is we'll basically just put those in place. That'll give us a nice little border for everything to stop at. It should be really close. We shouldn't have to do much sanding at all. Then we're just going to hold those in place with some binding tape. Okay, so we're ready to do our fill here for the groove channels in that semi-hollow. We've got a couple different things to do. We have some slow setting black epoxy. This is just a system from StewMac. We want to do that black line, and so we have the epoxy, and then we have the hardener. So those got to be mixed in equal parts. So what we're going to do is use this bag. We're going to fill the bag up with both these bottles. We're going to cut the corner and then refill one of the bottles and then get that channel all started. But what we're going to do is once we get started, we've got to commit to it. We've got to finish the job. So we will be mixing this and kind of going, and we'll probably have to shut the camera off if it gets too crazy. I've got Marco here behind the camera with me. He's going to be mixing and filling while we're putting the channel in. So got the rubber gloves, and the tips on these should be just about right I think, for filling that channel. We want to try not to have a lot of overfill, but we want it to be full enough that it'll work. So we will start by squirting the epoxies in here and mixing that, and then we will get rocking and rolling. So we are all filled. We had the 20-minute deadline, and thanks to Marco's help, we were able to get all the lines filled. So you get a little bit of a preview of what it's going to look like after it gets cleaned up. And then thankfully we bought the 20-minute setting epoxy, because we were definitely, there's a 5-minute epoxy, and we felt like that was definitely not enough time to make sure all the gaps were filled. We made sure to let it sit just a little bit and kind of top filled some of the holes, knowing that we're also going to be sanding this guitar down a little bit to reveal our clean lines, hopefully. So there it is. That's the next step, and after we give it about 24 hours to dry, then we will start hitting it with the sandpaper and see how good we did on our lines. All right, so we got all of the epoxy sanded back. It's starting to look really good. You can see kind of the vision for the lines here. Nice and clean. We've got a little bit of sanding left to do here in the neck pocket for our spillover. And one thing we did come across here is also a couple bubble spots in the black epoxy, so we're going to have to touch those up. See if we can see it, zooming it in there. There's some little places where we're going to have to add a little bit more epoxy and let it sand cure out, and then we'll sand it back. But it's definitely looking good. We're on the right track here. We'll get those little spots filled, and then we'll get it sanded back, and we'll go from there. All right, so we did a little cleanup on the fill line here. You can get a little preview of what that's going to look like. Definitely going to be very cool. You can see some of the figuring starting to pop there. We've just got those little pinholes that we're going to be filling. We just had some air bubbles in the channel, and we did have a little bit of issue with the hardener and the epoxy mixing correctly, but it did a really good job overall. We just have a couple little tiny spots to fill. So we're going to mix up some new epoxy. We're going to pop some of that in those holes and let it dry a couple more days, and we should be ready to go to the next step. All right, so now we're going to drill the access cavity between the pickup routes for the wires. So we're just going to use a nice and long drill bit here. And we're just going to drill through the neck pocket, the truss rod little notch there, drill through both pickups, and then drill an access hole into where the electronics are going to be. So we'll do that now. Okay, so we got that hole drilled. Now we're going to get that electronic access hole drilled. We want to make sure that we're not going to drill through the back of the guitar and that we have a good angle on that. So we want to visualize a nice break angle. So we'll show you kind of the way we access that here. We're going to try to hit the corner of this humbucker route. Usually I put a hand down or something down to make sure I'm not drilling out the top of the guitar body. I can keep this up in the pocket just a little bit. I do have some room. We made these holes a little bit deeper than they need to be for the humbucker. All right, so all the holes are drilled there. You can see there is our access wire. Didn't bust through the back of the guitar, so we're feeling good. The only other drilling left we have on the body is we're going to do the strap lock holes in the heel, and then we're going to do the access for the socket jack on the side into the electronic cavity. We'll get all that drilled, and then we'll be on to sanding on this thing. Okay, so we're ready for neck glue up now. So we're getting into some of the next stages of this neck. We've got our bird's eye blank here. We've got the truss rod in, and then we're gonna talk a little bit about headstock logo and stuff like that on the laser. We're gonna see if we can get all of that lined up and do that headstock logo probably right before we glue this truss rod in, just so we can keep everything flat. But if you can see here, there's the double action rod. Sometimes we need to make sure it's fitting really good. We've got, we may have to sand down the brass just slightly here, but it's looking pretty good. We're ready to move on to the next step. Okay, so we're about to try this on the roasted bird's eye piece. We're getting our alignment down to where we want it, and then we're gonna make sure it's forward and backwards where we want it as well. All right, so we got our headstock logo created there. You can see we haven't sanded it or anything, but looking very nice. You can see some of the practice attempts over here, just kind of messing with layouts and settings, but we're pretty happy with how that turned out, so let's get to the glue up. All right, we're gonna drop in some caulking in a couple different spots on the truss rod channel. This will prevent any extra rattling. It also just makes sure that it's not moving around. Everything is very tight on this channel, and as we're getting this ready for filming, we're running into curveballs. We got a jam in the caulking there, it looks like, right? You got something we can poke it with. Yes. We told you that we would show you all the mistakes and everything that comes along. So we're gonna just sit here and work this out. So there's Mike over there chasing the caulking. It's jammed.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Yeah, we're good. Okay. So again, like we said, we're going to put the caulking in there, and then we're going to use a cutoff drill bit as a locator pin. So I'm going to grab the fretboard blank. We had put the side dots in here. You can see them right there. We use a little side dot drilling jig to put those in. Got everything ready with the fretboard. Inside the nut slot here, you can see that locator hole right there. We're going to use that corresponding pin that's cut into the neck up near the, kind of right where that nut slot is. You can see right up there. Got the caulking going in, a couple different spots. And then what we're gonna do is put that truss rod in. And then we're gonna put a little piece of tape over the truss rod so we're not getting glue on the truss rod or in the channel. And then so we'll show you kind of this in a couple different segments, because once we get started, we kind of have to move on it. So installation of the truss rod. What we did before also is sanded down the brass ends of the truss rod just slightly to make sure everything fits well. And then we're hoping that we're going to prevent as much of this squeeze out as possible. All right, so the neck is all glued up, fretboard's glued on. We're happy with the results, I think, on our glue joints. So now we're just going to wait for a day or two, and then we'll be on to the next step, which is going to be carving this thing and starting to get closer and closer to make it into a guitar. Okay, so taking a look at our progress here as we finish this episode up. We've got the neck out of the clamps. We're ready to get started on some fretwork. We've got the laser logo looking nice there. We have quite a bit of cleanup to go on the neck edges. And then we're going to get into the fretting, pressing in the frets, prepping the neck for frets. We've got the inserts in our heel here. So it's starting to look like a guitar now. And you can see there as the channel is filled. What we're doing now is kind of as we finish up is just making sure all the little pinholes in here are filled. We have a couple little cracks as the epoxy didn't set correctly. And we'll get those touched up. And then you can see there in the neck pocket, we've got a little bit of a spillover from our epoxy. So we'll clean that so we can actually fit this neck in here. You can see it almost fits. There's a little kind of a preview of what it's going to look like. Starting to take shape quite a bit. So we'll get into the really nitty-gritty of the carving on the next episode. As you can see, we have a lot of rough stuff to work out here, and we'll get into all the next steps. So it's definitely feeling good. We're we're just getting ready to also to do a little bit of sanding, but this body is basically to the point now where it's going to get a lot of sanding. So we'll focus mostly on the neck in the next episode, a little bit of the progress of the body, and we'll be doing probably an oil finish on this body. So we'll be able to show you that probably fairly soon in one of the next couple episodes. Hope you guys are enjoying this. We did run into someone at our guitar show this last weekend that has been watching this, so that was pretty cool to see people that have been enjoying this process. And thank you guys so much for your support, and we'll catch you on the next episode.